How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to this week's episode of Chris Baran's Headcases. And I have to tell you, I'm a pretty big admirer of this week's guest. And I want to just give you a few of her credentials that she has here. She's freelance stylist. She's been one with Victoria's Secret. It's obviously no secret anymore. Also with J. Crew. She's been with New York Fashion Week, been a lead stylist. She's done music videos, editorial session work. She's been the Matrix Global Artistic Director, Creative Director for the Salon by InStyle with JCPenney. Education roles have been with Mazzani, Dyson, Kerastase as well. New one is that she's with Ulta Pro Beauty, the Broody teams. And along with all of that's got her a winner of NAHA 5 times in texture, avant-garde, editorial, styling, and finishing. My good friend, MichelleO'Connor. Now let's get into this week's head case. Well, Michelle, first of all, we had a little conversation the other day, and I said it then. I'm going to say it just so everybody else knows when I'm here. Is I'm a little bit awestruck right now because we know one another from passing in the dark at shows and saying
Yes.
hi. And if I recall correctly, I think we were even on a shoot together.
Yes.
That, like it seemed like 100 years ago, but I'll leave that alone. But part of it is I always see your work. I know that with your work that I see not in the magazines, but when I'm a NAHA freak. So when I say your name up there, and I'm always going, thank God I'm not in the same category that you're in, because I know I might as well just forget about it. So I'm a little, if I get a little nervous here, bear with me.
Stop it. I think the same of you. You're an icon in my mind.
Oh, thank you. Well, so for those of you who are listening, we had our little Chip and Dale moment, oh no, you're better than me. All of that. So we've got that out of the way. And most people, Michelle, won't even know who Chip and Dale was anyway. So I think we're aging ourselves. Listen, Michelle, I want to know a little bit about just establishing you, because people don't know you, and I don't know who that would be. But I think it's always interesting to know where we came from. So, it's always interesting. Some of my teachers always said, or the people I know always said, well, there's 2 kinds of hairdressers, the ones that just, you knew it from square one, and the ones that just kind of fell into it. I was the latter. What were you like? Did you fall into it? Was it something you always wanted to do? Was there other things pre-hairdressing for you?
Wow, definitely. I don't think I fell into it, but I feel like I would go into that category. I eased into it. It was something that in my previous life, I was a ballet dancer. I had trained my entire life since the time I was a little girl. And so there was such a fascination with not only the form and of dance, but also just the characters. When you think about these beautiful ballets like Nutcracker and Swan Lake and, Giselle, you think of all of these costumes and characters and transformations. And it's almost this sort of ethereal sort of way of expressing yourself. So it is an art form. Of course, we recognize it as that. And, hairdressing is also an art form, and it's also a form of expression. So that translation between transformation, changing into characters, hair, makeup, theatrics, that all sort of lended itself to me transitioning into the hair world.
I am... I'm in awe, literally. Anytime that I hear the people they've always got this great backstory, about, you and being a ballerina and aspirations of going on to be a professional ballerina. And if you've seen me dance, you know that I would never fit into that category. But everybody has these great backstories. And then, for me, my mother was a hairdresser. I knew I couldn't get fired. So I kind of fell into it.
But that's legacy. That's legacy, though.
Yeah, but I think it took, like I've said, it's been 55 years, I think 54, 55 years in the business. I really can probably only count 50 of them because my first four were kind of a disaster. Just party my brains out, all of that
That
stuff
was your
until
that was your seasoning. That was your
that was
seasoning.
well, it was really wasn't, and I've told the story far too many times just about a client that came in and said, "Don't cut my hair because I'm going to Montreal to get a good haircut," and that changed my life.
The
But that, I
shade.
mean, yeah, that was the thing that kind of shifted my career because I know it was kind of, I'll keep it PG, to poop or get off the pot with my
Yeah.
career, and that. But then I got hooked on education. Now, but
Okay.
I want to go back because there's you were also influenced. Was there somebody in your family that influenced you and the style? Because I've always loved your style because it's so beautiful and it's so feminine, and you can push boundaries, but it's still absolutely beautiful work. You said
Um,
that you have somebody in your family that helped you
True.
with that. Who was that?
I do. It's my aunt, my mom's sister, and
What's her name? What's her name?
her name is Florence.
What it was?
Her,
What?
her name is Florence.
Florence.
Yes.
And
She was a dressmaker, and I used to be at the bottom in between her legs of the sewing machine. And in those days, you would press on it. It was called the presser foot of the sewing machine. It's not this high tech world of sewing machines that we know today. It was like in those days, you would press on the pedal, and that would
yeah,
make the stitches go. So I would be down there at her feet watching what was going on, as well as digging in her scraps basket that held all of the fabrics she had cut off. And I was just enamored and amazed with textiles, the touch, the feel of it, silk, denim, all of the things that started out as just this plain sheet and ended up being beautiful garments. And so I think that left a lasting impression. I've always been very intrigued, and I have a love affair with fashion. I feel like hair, makeup, and fashion are very much a trifecta. They go together. And so it left an indelible print on how I approach my work. I love things to very much look aspirational. I like
mm,
it to look like, something that could be photographed. And that dancer sort of doing things until it's air quotes stage ready or perfect is sort of what I approach with my work, in terms of nothing is ready until it's stage ready. No hair is done or beautiful enough to either walk out of the salon or to be photographed until it's as close to perfect as I can get it.
love it. I love it. I just had a thought there on your, and I think we chatted about this just the other day, that when I listened to you about where you were going to go, I'm curious because there's always this thing about our parents, and it's one thing that always comes to, I think, every hairdresser. You hear stories about when they went to their folks and said for whatever aspiration they want, and I think my mom was just glad I was going to get the hell out of the house and have a job. But the going to your, and my mom was a hairdresser, so she was elated when I said hair. But the reality is, not all parents were, because they have a different concept of what hairdressing is, the amount of earning that you do have in this profession as opposed to others. What was it like when I'm trying to imagine now this um, ballerina who has aspirations and can go on to be professional, and then goes to mom and dad and says, "Hey, I'm going to be a hairdresser." What was that experience like for you?
Um, my family was very unimpressed with that choice. They were loving and supportive, but it was kind of with a little bit of side eye. It just in their mind fit every stereotype for the default profession, something that you
Yeah.
do because there's nothing else that you want to or can do. And so they just wanted something that they felt like was more for me. And so in sort of gravitating towards careers that we think are more, such as becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer, becoming an engineer, these are the things, becoming a businesswoman, these are the things that your family, your parents want you to strive for. So in that moment, and whatever confidence I had as that 20 something year old, I knew enough to at least stand up for myself and say, I will not be mediocre in this.
Right. Yeah. So, and what was there when they were done? Was it okay, good? We give you permission. You're good to go. But was there still things you had to prove as you went along through there?
I think I put blinders on after that. I think I really, it's kind of like this space. And again, I liken it to being a dancer. When you are in the throes of rehearsing something, you're in this other world almost, where you're just kind of very intense and very disciplined. And so I just kind of I put blinders on, and I got into the space of, I've got to make it through hair school, and I've got to find one of the best salons in my area that I can find. I have to go the route of apprenticing and seeing what else this profession has to offer, because I know that it's like infinite.
And pardon my giggling right now, because this image came into my brain. I remember from my school, I went to school in Marvell Beauty School in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Had to climb, I think, 3 or 4 flights of stairs, rickety old chairs. And we had these amazing teachers up there that I really loved, especially the Ms. McPherson, who was she called the baby class. But, for me, it was, go home on the weekend, party, come back. It's not like I had people that were going, I wasn't what you'd call the model student that was in beauty school. Because number one, I was just being there so I could get a job. Number two is I was in half of the class and made the top half possible, if you know what I mean. So I'm having this vision of Miss Michelle coming into the school, professional ballet mindset, discipline.
Yes.
Probably competitive, I would imagine. And being
Definitely.
a 5-time NAHA winner, I don't know where that would come from. But I'm trying to imagine you in that school right now. So tell us a bit, what was it like when you went to the school? Because you probably had that gradient of, you probably had, God knows, could have had Chris Baran sitting in there, floating little boats made out of end papers in the barbicide bottle. And then there's you. I can only imagine clamoring for the student. Tell me a little bit about what was that like in school for you?
You're definitely taking me back. I remember, I hate for it to sound like a toot of my horn, but I was definitely the top of the class. I think a couple of things was lending itself to that, and it was just the background of having had my hands in hair indirectly. I have a lot of girl cousins. I was the one that would make people over. Like, they'd be like, okay, Michelle can do your makeup. Michelle can do your hair. Like, I was that person. So there was an actual sort of dexterity that I already had in my fingers. And one of the unique things about my family is that we are very racially diverse. And so because of that, we have a lot of different hair textures all within one family, cousins, grandparents, siblings. And so I got to have my hands in a lot of different kinds of hair, from straight all the way to the most tightly coiled pattern. And so it really broadened what I was able to do once I got to hair school. It was sort of like there already. It just needed to be cultivated.
That's amazing, because and again, because I'm thinking of Ms. McPherson, when you're in the class, and she has customers. And I don't know about what was you didn't really have appointments. They would book occasionally, but then a client would come in, and then they would look throughout the room and they would go, okay, you're best suited for that. Okay. And they would give it to somebody. I can remember them. This person would come in for color, because I was sucked at color. And
oh gosh, yes,
she would come in with a color client, and she would go down, like we would sort of be lined up, not physically lined up, but she'd go down the line. She'd go, okay, that person, Chris, no. And she would go down the line. I know that she'd probably go, Michelle, you should have Michelle.
I mean, I remember those days when you were working on the clients that would come into the beauty school. Color, chemistry, oh my gosh, it was terrifying. So I completely understand. Wrapping perms, all of that, oh my gosh. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, that it's like God, how we made through some of that stuff, I will never know. But thank God for the teachers, and for any of
Thank
the
God for the
teachers that
teachers.
are listening out there. God bless you for that.
And thank God for the hair schools that are just, your basic sort of. I didn't go to a fancy schmancy hair school. It was just like a technical school. And I look
Yeah.
at, some of these hairdressers coming out of these big institutions and, that are costing as much as like, college tuition. And I'm like, that's wonderful. I was like, that wasn't my experience.
Yeah. I want to fast forward. I'm going to take you. Okay. We're out of school. You went through the process. Where did you, like, when you started off, what was it like when you started off in a salon and you got into the salon? Where did you go? What was the effect that the salon had on you? And I want to tie this into what effect from that salon experience eventually got you into going, I want to teach people too. Did you teach in the school? I mean, teach in the salon eventually, or what was that experience like?
There's a couple moving parts to that question. So one of them being when I graduated hair school, I as an individual really found myself at a crossroads, and being a woman of color, but having, parents that are racially diverse. I have on my mom's side, my grandfather is from Shanghai, China. My mom's dad was Scottish. My father's father is half Irish. There's, of course, African descent, all via the Caribbean. So I have cousins that are completely Asian, cousins that are completely Scottish, that look every which way. And so because being the child of immigrant parents, race is very it's really different outside of the United States. And so one of the mottos for the island of Jamaica is out of many, one people. And so there's very little separation in terms of this is a white person, this is a black person, this is an Asian person,
Right.
because you're sharing a culture. You're sharing the same kind of food. You're sharing the same kind of music. You share your culture, so race becomes less significant. So coming out of hair school, I probably, unlike maybe a lot of other people where it's a very easy decision, I did not know where I was going to go, because the salon business really had itself separated into white salons and black salons.
Yeah, very
And
much
so
so.
I knew I wanted to have very prestigious training. I knew I wanted to apprentice. I knew I needed to learn a whole lot more. But I knew I also wanted to learn more about Afro textured hair, tightly coiled hair. So my first stop at the ending of hair school was at a natural hair care salon in Fort Lauderdale. And in this salon, they were the preeminent salon that was doing, at the time, this was the early 2000s. We had big mega stars like Lauryn Hill was out and on the charts at that time. She was wearing locks. You had the Williams' sisters, Venus and Serena. They were wearing braids and beads. And so these people were frequenting this salon. And so I was there for about 6 to 9 months, and it occurred to me that there was a whole side of the business that I wasn't learning. I wasn't learning how to do highlights. I wasn't learning how to do precision cutting. I wasn't learning how to really become an expert in color, because I was twisting and braiding, and I was like just really only doing deposit only, matching the natural color. And I said to myself, I'm missing a part of the education that I desire to have. And so I left that salon, and I walked into one of the top white salons in Fort Lauderdale, and they were doing all of the news anchors. They were doing photo shoots. They were doing so much in terms of being involved, not only as a salon and having a huge presence as a salon, but they were, doing the Miami Dolphin cheerleaders. Like they were doing a lot of high profile clients as well. So I apprenticed there for about a year. And when I interviewed with the owner, one of the questions he asked me was, and just very, very bluntly, he said, "You want to do Caucasian hair?" And I said, "I want to do all hair." And he hired me. And so that legacy of just even what you see me advocating for today, I started my career on that tune. I started that way. And the culmination of what we see happening in the industry, where there's been a recognition of like the desire to bring all the beauty worlds together, that has been my mission for 20 years. And so learning in that salon and really becoming a student of the craft in its entirety is what lends itself to 15 years later, Michelle being able to win NAHA, Michelle being able to be in spaces that don't recognize her color necessarily, but just recognize her talent.
It's wild, because I heard you say just a short bit ago about in the year 2000, and you were talking about you knew all these things, except you didn't feel proficient in cutting, etc. And so you went somewhere to learn that. And I've heard this, that they say kind of the hair history repeats itself every 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting right now. And I'd like to hear your thought on, I have my view on it, but if you went through like in the 80s, 90s, big haircut, it went from precision cutting to, people cut their hair, but really their people aren't cutting their hair now. They're, the salons that I go to, they're terrified. Some of them are terrified of cutting short hair. With that in mind, tell me what you see. What do you see out in the industry right now when it comes to cutting versus coloring versus long hair versus blah blah blah? What do you notice? What do you see?
There was a time in our business where we were very big on compartmentalizing areas of expertise, and within that you could really hone a skill and become an expert, and you would be the person that would just solely focus on that. I think there's a combination of things. I think information has become so accessible to us, and it's a blessing and it's also a detriment, because there's a lot to our profession that has ended up like on YouTube. So you have people that are, I like to call it YouTube University, where they're going on YouTube and they're doing what they think is being demonstrated, and they're attempting to do this, on their own. And we've had to really step up our own sort of practices in terms of making sure that we're still ahead of the consumer, because I don't really see a lot of professions that are teaching consumers how to do what they do. And so you don't see a doctor going on YouTube and saying, this is how you take out a spleen. Yet, we're out there saying, this is exactly how you do this. And so I get a little nervous sometimes about, rumblings of deprofessionalizing, our industry, where it's like, oh, do they really need a license? And because you absolutely unequivocally do, if you want to have something that is on a professional level and you want your hair to actually be still standing on your head. So I am a huge proponent for people that are advocating for professionalism, things like the PBA, any entity that opts to keep our profession elevated, I am all about it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I encourage people, if they're not part of PBA, they should make sure that they're part of it, because part of what they do, and I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but I think while we're there, let's best serve them by saying the more hairdressers can get involved in that, the more they can help us to keep the license that people do need to get there. So enough of that. But I agree with you 1,000% in what you just said. Now, I want to take you from, I want to go into what sparked education. I know that was kind of the second part, and I have a way of throwing all the questions coming out at the same time. How did you get from hairdresser behind the chair, successful to whatever degree of success you had, and then you went, I'm going to become an educator. What was the catalyst? What happened to make you veer?
Go into that. So as I stated, the mission, whether I knew it was a mission at that point or not, was to say I will not be mediocre in this. Once I started working in the predominantly white salon, I realized that now there was an element of hairdressing that I wasn't getting anymore. I didn't have any black clients. I didn't. So I said, okay, how am I going to do this? Because we're still living in a very separate type of industry. And so I don't want to leave here. I'm happy here. I'm happy of the work that I'm doing. I'm seeing my strides, my improvements. What can I do? I sought out the Mizani brand. And I contacted them. I had a portfolio, and alongside of me seeking out education, I was doing some minor things in the world of like photo shoots, campaigns, and this was via the salon. So I was getting a taste of some things in that world, and I had a portfolio as a result of that. So in those days, your portfolio was your book of things that you had done. It's not like today where people just look on, your Instagram. And I sent out my portfolio, and I picked Mizani because they were the brand that was affiliated with L'Oreal that had a focus on black hair care.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that this would round out everything that I was doing. And so I decided to go with them. It worked out successfully. I was given a lot of opportunities. I was put in front of a lot of different individuals. I just met so many people, not only from the brand Mizani itself, but even just the other brands like Redken, Matrix. I made some great friendships. There were things that, we crossed paths on. And so that allowed me to cross paths with Nick Stenson. And he and I go way back, and we've just been rocking and rolling ever since. And so it opened up this sort of desire to get better at doing what I was doing. And I knew that when you have to teach something, you learn what you're doing at such a deeper level that it's silly to not become an educator, because I was learning so much in the process, and I didn't go into it saying, oh, I really have this big heart and I want to give back. That wasn't the initial sort of thought process. That was a byproduct. And once I got a taste of that, how what you share with someone could fill someone, could change their life. I was like, I thought I was doing someone a favor, and they actually have been feeding my soul, because in essence, we are all put here to serve, right? And it's just in what capacity are you serving? So the server is actually the one getting the gift.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there. We've all seen educators that we love and adore, and we've also seen educators that were just about them. And I think that you hit on the key word there. You said servant leader. Is that just means you help other people first. And I think one of the rules on anybody who can become a leader, you and I have titles, and wonderful. It's nice to have the title, but people will follow because they have to if they just have it's just a title. But when you make a difference in somebody's life, they follow you because they want to follow you. And I think that's the big key difference, is that whether you're, excuse me, on stage, teaching and sharing with thousands of people, or whether you're in the salon teaching your apprentice, teaching your associate, the stylist next door. But hey, can I just share something with you? And like you said, the moment that you teach it, and you probably have to teach it a few times to get it right to get it right the last time you do it, you truly become an influence in their life. And that's what really does help to change people. So I
am only a good or half decent or whatever you want to call me hairdresser because I'm an educator. Right. If I wasn't an educator, I would not have the skill level that I have.
Bingo.
Mm.
You can tell where I go on the weekends. Me in the bingo parlor. Bingo. You talked about Nick, who, Nick, as far, I love that man because if you want to talk about somebody that is selfless and somebody that has changed people's lives and careers by, instead of him doing stuff, he gets other people to do it, and you see him as bigger. If he helps you, you see him as bigger than anybody else, or people would put him at if he did the work himself. Is there other people? I know Nick has changed your life. Other people in our industry that helped to change your life?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Ammon was a huge influence on me as well. You spoke with him on one of your podcasts. I have a whole host of people that have impacted me and not even knowing, like Sharon Blaine is someone that's impacted my career. I absolutely am a huge lover of the art of traditional hairdressing, and I feel like it should never die. Nick French, I love, there's some Damian Carney. There's so many that I've looked to as the same hearts in the eyes, awestruck people of just excellence, just pure excellence. I look at some of the current ones today, like you guys have Rachel Red. I love her. You are one of them. It's just Lindsay on your team as well. Like there's a whole host of people that I've taken bits and pieces from them and made my own little quilt out of just my love and my admiration of who they are as artists.
Yeah, I think you hit a key point there, is that, for anybody that wants to get what, to strive to do what Michelle does, it's not just, you've got to be yourself, but you learn from so many other masters that I love the way you put that as a quilt, is if you can take all of that put together, including what you do and your knowledge, that's really what makes you a part of who you do. And that's what draws people to you when you're out there. And that's what makes you successful. And whether it's on your own, an influencer, or working for manufacturers or whatever it is, that's what will draw people, because those are the kind of people that they look for. So you've been on the road now. How many years has it been that you've been traveling on the road, et cetera? When did you start?
Probably 5 years. 5 years into my career. So I became a hairdresser in 2020. So this year marks 22 years, and so about 5 years in. So that would make 17
Wow.
years. And I've done it with a family. I've done it with, I have one son. He's in college, in New York. And I had a tremendous network. I talked about having, immigrant parents, as well as my entire family. I'm a first generation American. And so we have a very close knit relationship. It was kind of like we all have to stick together in order for us to thrive. And
Right.
so they were my community. That old adage that it takes a village, they were my village. So we had all the aunts, cousins taking turns. They would come over, they would bring meals. They would come to my house when I would have to travel so that my son wouldn't have to go anywhere. They would come and they would make sure his uniforms were ready. They are the reason why I've been able to, as a woman in this business, because we all know that there's a lot more barriers for women trying to chase the dream, that they are the only reason why I've been able to do it.
Yeah, and that's critical in our lives, etc. I want to talk about two things. Firstly, is that when you're on the road, I don't know what it was like for you, but I can remember my first time. Page full of room, being nervous, blah, blah, blah. And by the end of it, nobody left in the room, wishing that last person would leave so I could just leave the stage early. But was there times in everybody sees you now, and they see packed room, standing ovation at the end. But what was it like at the beginning? Was there times when you went, OMG, this is different? What were some of the weirdest times, that road stories that you had?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the early days, like you almost feel like imposter syndrome. Like
Mm,
you're like, oh my gosh, is the audience gonna like call me out on something that I may not be sure of? Like, because in those days you're still learning, you're still building, and don't get me wrong, you're a forever learner, a continuous
right.
learner. However, you don't have your footing, you don't have your 100% confidence in terms of the material you're reciting, and you're just hoping that one, you do a good job. You're hoping that you say the right things. You're hoping that people are engaged, that people like you. And so there is a lot of that nervousness that goes along with it. And also paying dues, like there were a lot of things that I did as an artist when I saw, if I wasn't given an opportunity to come to a show, I would still go to the show, and I would go backstage and I would ask the brand if they needed any extra hands. I was there. I happened to be there anyway. And so please let me know if you needed any extra help, if there's any body that needs help with prepping. So there was a humility that went along with wanting more. And I was willing to sweep hair, wash hair, work for free. Like there was just a willingness to do all of those things so that I could be around great people that I could learn from.
It's that's, I think, what gives you the mindset to go on further, when you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. We have a little parallel. I can remember, and this was, I'm going to say, a couple of years before the year 2000. This is when Anthony Muscolo and the TG team would travel, and they were doing a lot of tours throughout the States and Canada. And I remember at that time being in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, had my first salon, and I didn't have any aspiration to become an educator. I just wanted to learn. And Joan Harrison, God rest her soul, was the editor of a magazine in hair magazine in Canada, and also was the person that was organizing those tours. And I remember knowing that the Tony Guy team at that time was coming to Canada, coming to Saskatoon.
Love that.
And I said, listen, I'll do whatever. If you need me to pick them up at the airport, I'll pick them up at the airport. If you want me to work backstage, I'll work backstage. I'll do shampoos. I'll do whatever. And I remember, and I think, I can't remember if it was ever happened with Anthony, but I remember, I think it was either Daniel Galvin or his brother was working with them at the time, and he came in to do a seminar. And I said, Joan, I'll pick you guys up. I'll take you to the hotel. I'll do whatever. And I had, I think that it was like a 1972 van, customized, used to be a racing van, big, huge tires off of the back. And I remember, and green shag carpet on the inside, only 2 bucket seats in the front. I was styling. And, and I remember carrying their luggage out to the van, and I brought the van right out to the front. And I remember, even at that time, the front wasn't painted yet. It was still kind of this primer red over the thing before we had the body work and the murals put on, etc. And I remember pulling them up to the curb. They're sitting on the corner. They're sitting on the curb. I pull up in the van and slide open the door. They see the green carpet, and their eyes kind of, just wide open, and they stared, and they go, what the hell did I get myself into? But I'll tell you, that was the best thing that I ever did. And from there, I said, look, I'll even travel on my own to get there. So for people that are listening, watching, it's not about just doing due diligence. Is where is your mindset, and what are you willing to do in order to really help your career? And that's what will manifest the whole thing.
But you know what, Chris? Like you wanted to do it. And the thing about it is you realize that when there's a willingness and there's a desire to just learn, go the extra mile, that you are in your calling, that you are in the space that you're supposed to be. Because I look at showing up at shows as I was going to be there anyway. I
Yeah.
wanted to go. I wanted to take classes. If this is drudgery for you, or it feels like a task, or it feels like a chore, then I sincerely feel like, people have to really evaluate what they're passionate about, because when you are just inherently passionate about something, it isn't
Mhm.
work. It's your pleasure. It's your joy.
Yeah. I think, and it's interesting because I talked to a lot of salon owners in the last couple of years, and right now, especially since where the world went and what we went in the last couple of years, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But I find everybody's always talking about how people have changed and they're different now, and they just want more quality time, and they want talking about that, working less hours, etc. Now, first of all, I'm not saying that's wrong. Please, for anybody listening, watching, don't take anything I'm wrong here. I think that what's happened is people have a different mindset, but there are still things that you can do without throwing yourself into working 80 hours a week, trying to get your dreams to come true. But you can ration those hours and still do those things um, and get the benefits of them, because there's things that just by even just taking an hour's practice per week, even if you're going to watch YouTube, great, but that doesn't do anything for you unless you get somebody down in front of you and do a step along with it. So if you're going to watch somebody,
Absolutely.
watch a video on YouTube, but then get a mannequin down and just, even if you're doing a few sections, just so you understand what's right, what's wrong, what's different, and what you learn,
There-
then I think
we
that's a big
we
key.
we we learned how to adapt during the pandemic, and really treasure and value online education, and it's here to stay, and there's definitely a place for it, but it really can't even hold a candle to doing something in person. It really
Right.
just can't. Human connection is one of the most beautiful connections, and just all it's beyond just learning. It's really about connecting, and um, I know that we had to do what we had to do, and we will have very much a hybrid situation where we still have access to learn things. And I agree with you. You're really not going to learn by just sitting in a chair and watching what someone's doing on a screen. You've got to get your hands dirty.
Bingo. Bingo. Here's the analogy that I loved, and I can't remember who I to give credit to it for, but I remember they said you can't sit and watch somebody uh, type on a keyboard. You can't listen to lessons on how to type on a keyboard without getting your fingers on the keyboard. And it's the same thing with
Right.
hair. You've got, I'm afraid I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, so I'm just going to say it and then we can move on. But I think
Okay.
that we have such a messed up society when you're ranked really high by doing things well. You're ranked lower if you make mistakes, but yet the only way we learn is by making mistakes. So is that not screwed up or what? I always say, what are you doing to allow yourself and put yourself in a safe environment at a safe time to make mistakes? So when you go out and put your big boy and your big girl panties on and you go out in the real world where you're going to be judged, so you've made the mistakes beforehand, and now you can go out there and you can have a higher level of success so people see your wins. You know,
I
I
think
think that's critical.
I agree. I agree. I think we have to get comfortable with letting people see us not all perfectly polished and put together. And I still take classes. I still show up in artists' classes all the time, and from the people that may recognize me in the class to the instructor, sometimes there's this sort of, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, you really shouldn't be asking me what I'm doing here. I'm here because I want to learn, and I value you as someone that I want to learn from, and I will be a student just like everybody else sitting in the class being a student. And it does take some swallowing of pride, some humility to actually force yourself to be a forever learner. If you stop learning, you stop living. And
Bingo.
so that the minute you no longer think there's something more for you to learn, that
Mm,
is the beginning of the end for you, for your
yeah.
human life. And so you should always be a lifelong and a student learner. And I work really hard at trying to do that. And I still do clients in the salon. I never ever stopped doing clients in the salon, no matter when the opportunity presented itself to completely leave the salon behind. I never left the salon behind. It just didn't
Smart.
feel right. And
Yeah.
it's much less. It is much, much less than it was at the beginning of my career. Much, much less, because I'd be falling on the floor out of exhaustion. However, I love it. I
Yeah.
love seeing those clients. I love being able to still keep my hands in hair and keep my speed. Being able to have, again, that human connection with people whose lives I'm a witness to. And I think there's just a couple of things, if you keep in place throughout your career, you will continue to, have that longevity and not feel like, okay, it's my time's up. It's time for me to, move on over. Like you should continuously be looking for ways to reinvent and become a better version of yourself.
Yeah. How, I think that, do you find that being in the salon and all the, whether it's 2 or 10, 20 clients a day, whether it's, once a week, twice a week, or all week long, do you find being and I'm taking a wild stab at here, and I think that anybody who's a 5-time NAHA winner, you've done more than 5 shoots. I think everybody always sees us as the people that won NAHA, but they don't see all the times that
You didn't win.
You didn't win. But how does being in the salon all the time, what does that do for your freshness? What does that do for when you put a collection? I want to talk a little bit about where your mind goes when you're putting a collection together.
Gosh, my mind goes to a lot of places. It literally, if it looked like something, it would be a car wash. It is just a lot of things happening at once. I grab on a lot of my personal aesthetic, which again, like we talked about, dance, silhouette lines. Only those things are being created with the body. Like any other artist, I look for different mediums of art form. I look at, landscape. I look at, literal artwork. I look at photography. I look at all of these things in and outside of the realm of hair itself. And I also look at culture. Culture is a very important thing to me. And so I grab on just small little things from various cultures that I can sort of add and have influence in collections. I always love for there to be a very feminine aesthetic. I can't run away from that.
I see that.
I think ballet is probably one of the most gentle, delicate type of forms that you can learn. And so I think there's always a little bit of a feminine, delicate nature with a hint of masculinity to it.
I
I
see
play
that.
in...
I jumped on you there, and I'm sorry, but I just want people to get from you is, and I'm even going to take you back when you talked about lines, and you said the line and form. What are you also talking about that insofar as the way that you might position a model during the shoot? Are you
Absolutely.
involved?
Absolutely. Yes,
Give us more
I
of that,
do.
because
I get
if there's
very
one thing,
involved.
if there's one thing that I notice is some people just do if they're just into doing a shot on hair, they're so focused on hair that they don't really realize that it's not always the most important thing in your shot. But
No, it's a
that you can
feeling.
have a model with amazing hair, but if they just sitting there like a lump and there's no emotion in that model's eyes, face, in their that projection, then it's a wash. What do you do?
So,
How do you help
yeah.
to give the model that?
So one of the things that I always knew, and this is from touching back to that dance background, is that dance is a form of art that you express without words.
Mm.
And so the mark of a good dancer beyond technique is the expressiveness. I remember training as a young girl and critiquing your dance teacher, critiquing you. One of the columns would be expressiveness. Another column would be musicality. Another column would be lines. Another
Mm.
column would be extensions. Just I remember just how this was quantified as good or bad. And so when I look at a photo, and especially getting into the NAHA mindset, that photo has to make me feel something.
Mm.
And I know if the photo makes me feel something when I leave the studio that day.
Yes.
So, and I've said this over and over again. It has to stop you in your tracks, and it's not because the hair is so exquisite and
Yes.
amazing. Yes, that may very well be true. However, what is her body saying? What are her eyes saying? Because if that hair is phenomenal, but her eyes are dead, that's not a winner. It
Yeah.
has to become. It is the closest thing we have to and a lot of people use this and say it's the closest thing to what we have in our world that would be considered like an Oscar. And so it's a huge recognition. And what are you recognizing? You're recognizing the beauty of photography and lighting and makeup. It's a story, and it has to make you feel something. And if it doesn't make you feel something, I don't care how beautiful the hair is, it's dead and it's dull.
Right. There's kind of 2 points that you're going to hear it in my voice here right away. I was watching The View. First of all, if you're watching any View, which I doubt if you'd ever watched this podcast, but still love your work. But interesting, like they had these little shots that came up, and then they had pictures of hair that came up, and everybody, you could tell, none of them hairdressers, but they're going to give their opinion of where they're at. And they had pictures of avant-garde haircuts, obviously on wigs,
Okay.
and making these inane comments about it when some hairdresser put their time and their energy into this. And I just thought how demeaning. And that's now, so my point to this is I don't want to go down that road of what they said, but it's just that with avant-garde, most people do not understand. Like if you're outside of our industry,
Yes.
then they don't understand avant-garde hair, and they don't understand what it stands for and just the pure creativity behind it. And I know that you've won avant-garde at NAHA. So tell me a little bit about where your mind goes. Define more what avant-garde is, and when you go into an avant-garde shoot, what do you look for?
I think I don't even approach it necessarily methodically. I actually do it a little unconventionally, whereas I start creating, I start building the hair, I start building the looks, and then I decide on the category. So I don't decide on the category and then build to fit the category. I build the looks and put it where I feel it belongs. And so that's much less stressful for me. I feel much less boxed in that way. And I'm able to just really be expressive and create as I see fit. And if it goes into the realm of feeling like it's no longer wearable or mainstream, then by process of elimination, it then goes into avant-garde.
Yeah, that's.
But I think it's just letting the boundaries of it go, and I hear what you're saying about, the outside world really doesn't understand what avant-garde hair is. Almost in the same way that, the fashion world, when they have some designers that create couture clothing, how it's very abstract. It's very out there, but there's a respect that is required of that industry, and we all know that that's not going to be, you know, on the lady that works at the bank. However, it is the highest form that art can exist in, and when you have it existing in that level, it's influencing. So there is a food chain in the hair world that I believe people don't understand, and that's all the things that you see that are considered mainstream have some type of dot that you could connect back to an avant-garde aesthetic.
Yep. Yeah. I always say this one is that the biggest thing was when, and I've talked about this in other ones. So if you're listening and if you listen to the other one, it's going to be the same because it's true. But when McQueen, he started with skulls.
Yes.
And that was considered demonic.
Queen,
and
yes.
Now, I mean, I'm sure your grandma has knickers that have skulls on them, and it's just everyday fashion, and it's no longer that image that you have. So for, you know, to me, when I see everything that's avant-garde, I see it being able to be watered down, even if it's this extreme shape. What's that shape really watered down? And what would that, if it was in a classic, more of a classic haircut or a shape that you could create out of curl or whatever. And I think that's where people on the outside, if you look at our world, everybody goes by avant-garde and they go, oh my God, that's unbelievable, because they know how hard that is to create. So,
and you do it so well. Oh my gosh, I remember passing by the Redken room and you were building this look with these like sticks, and it was like out of this world, and it stopped me in my tracks. And is someone going to, you know, wear that on the New York City subway? No, but is there some element that might trickle its way down into mainstream society? Absolutely. Absolutely. And they will not know where it came from.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, to me, is, I think there's so many mediums that you can do avant-garde work with. You know, yes, it can be hair. No, it doesn't have to be hair. You could create something with something else. I'll never forget. I think was one of the things that we were doing some shows in South Africa, and I'm trying to be really clever and remember the name of the salon that did this advert. And I actually cut out the advert. If I can still find it, I'm gonna make sure that I post it on here. But it was, I believe the name of the salon was Yazoo, and they had these amazing looking model, but they took a mop head, you know, the white stringy mops, and they put a fringe into it, and their ad was more negative towards the hair, meaning, you know, your hair won't look like this when you leave, implying you won't get a mop haircut when you come to our salon. But I looked at that and I went, that's an amazing idea. What could you create from that? And so I think that you can take other mediums and do amazing stuff with it if you just let your creativity and your mind wander and not stop.
You absolutely can.
You've got to stop with what will people think and just do. Because if you can push it as far as you can go, I mean, I've done hundreds of pieces where I looked at it after and I went, well, this is just absolutely el toro caca. I would never do this, but
and it will not see the light. It will not see the light of day.
Nobody's going to see it but me. But the reality is I'll learn something from that I'll do next time that will work out. So
absolutely. Or maybe it's just an element from it or one small detail from it. I 100% agree with you wholeheartly. I love it. There's a space, a significant space for avant-garde hair in our profession, pro as well as consumer.
Yeah. If I'm shifting it again, and just kind of, but I know we've monopolized a lot of your time, but I always think of this to me as I know what mine is, but if I had a wish for our industry, and I had that just one wish, and they said for the whole industry, not for you, But if you could have that wish for that industry, what would it be? And then, so my question to you is that if you had one wish and Chris the genie could pop out and said, I would grant you one wish, and it could be everything for the betterment of your industry, what would that be? What would your wish be?
I think it's very clear for me that one wish has and continues to be that we exist in an industry that looks at the fabric of hair as a fabric and separates it less, and that we keep our profession elevated, and we take our craft as having the responsibility of making sure that we know how to do all of the things that are required that our license gives us license to do. And that is, no matter what type of hair someone has on their head, we should have the wherewithal and the education to be able to manipulate it and put it in a capacity that brings that client joy and happiness. And that is my overarching dream, wish, goal. I want us all to really just take ownership of this profession and not run away and say, you know, I can't, or I don't know how, or you know, that's intimidating to me, and to just kind of learn. And if you don't know, just learn. Everyone can learn. There's no such thing as my fingers can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Successful people always, like, it's a term I've coined, is I always say, Goya, it's out there, you know, get off your assets, we'll say, because I think that there's everything that we have, but I know we have to get off of our backside in order to do stuff. But there's always these things some things that people just don't let go of, that holds them back from getting what they really want. If you had to put it down into one word or one quick sentence, what was the thing that you think that people just need to let go of in order to get success?
It's fear, and fear would be my word, and my sentence would be do it afraid. Just do it afraid.
Look, oh my God. I'm a Chihuahua. I have no hair on my body. But you said that, and immediately my erector pili muscles, just for you know what that is, anybody who on your arm, it stood up when you said that. I want you to say that again. Say that one more time. That last sentence.
Okay. Do it afraid.
Oh my God. That is, I'll just go like this, and then Lee can bleep it. So I didn't actually say it.
You're never not going to be afraid.
Awesome.
Yeah, you're never, I mean, people say, oh, what do you have to be fearful? You are going to be fearful. That's a human reaction, emotion. Just, okay, we've established that. You're afraid, you're scared. Do it afraid. Do it afraid.
No, that's going to go. I will adopt that on, and I will always forever give you credit on that. Listen, you are probably one of the classiest ladies I know, and it was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, it was the least I could do. And as my good friend Chris Moody always says, he says, it's the least I could do, and never let it be said that I didn't do the least that I could do. So in the meantime, it was a pleasure having you. God bless you. And I'm still totally in awe.
Very good. Chris, you enjoy. I'll see you on the what do you call it? What do we call it? The circuit.
On the road, wherever the hell we are. We'll be on the flip side somewhere out there. But listen, for all of you listening, just what is your handle? What's your Instagram title? Just so that people can get a hold of you, watch your work, see your work. What is it?
Absolutely. It's at MichelleO'Connor Beauty. At
MichelleO'Connor Beauty, and that you are. Okay, everybody. Thank you guys for all of you listening, etc. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you. Absolutely appreciate you.
All right. Take care, Chris.
Cheers.